Good afternoon, everybody. It's time. It's time to kick off the first of 5 scheduled weekly Seahawks videos from your favorite Seahawks YouTuber. That's right, we are doing Snap Count Monday. And after having a chance to go over the snap counts from the first game against Indianapolis, the results are mostly positive. There's one thing that I want to highlight that may be a concern, but I think that we have a pretty good understanding of how to get through a long, arduous season after looking at these snap counts. So we're going to start with the offense and work our way through to the defense. The first thing we're going to look at is the one thing from Sunday's game that I'm a little uncomfortable with. Now, before I say what I'm about to say, I want to stress one thing. The Seahawks did not play very many snaps on offense on Sunday. They played a grand total of 54 offensive snaps. That is not very many, and there were a lot of reasons why that was. We were efficient. We had a couple of big plays that reduced the number of plays you have to run to cross the field. When we didn't get a good drive going, we were typically going 3 and out or 4 and out. So there are a lot of reasons why we only had 54 snaps on offense. So everything I'm about to say about this first player is not that bad. However, in terms of a percentage and in terms of what it might mean down the line, I'm a little bit concerned, and that's with Chris Carson. As you can see, he played 42 of 54 possible snaps. Now, 42 snaps for a bell cow running back like Chris Carson basically is understandable. However, we all know that Chris Carson has an injury history. We all know that if you put too much on him, he's going to break. So I'm looking at this 42 snap count, and I'm looking at this percentage of snaps played, which was almost 78%, and I'm thinking to myself, could we have lightened the load a little bit? Now, Carson balled out. He had 19 touches and close to 120 yards, and he was one of our best players, so we needed him. But did we need him for 42 snaps? I don't know. I personally hope that as the season goes on, this percentage can go down to closer to 70. And if you take a look at the other running backs on this team, it kind of makes sense where those snaps could go. Now, Penny, we're going to talk about him later today, but he got 7 snaps and got injured, 13%. Collins was inactive. DJ Dallas got 3 snaps. I think you could give him a handful more to take the load off of Carson, only 6%, not even. And Travis Homer got 2 snaps, or a little less than 4%. So that's your running back spread. Okay. Wide receiver, this is actually kind of interesting as well. Metcalf and Lockett were on the field for most of the snaps, as you would expect, but actually not as much as I would have anticipated. Metcalf was off the field for 4 of our 54 snaps, so 92.5%, and Lockett was off the field for 8 snaps, so he only played about 85% of the snaps. That is not trivial. And part of the reason why that was is because we would run 1 receiver sets, or once or twice I think we ran no receiver sets. So that's not super meaningful, but there were a couple of plays where we would have a backup out there instead of one of those 2 starters. So not putting 100% of the snaps on those 2 guys is probably a good thing, especially Lockett, because we know that he's a little, I don't want to say delicate, but we don't like it when he gets hit hard. Let's put it that way. Dwayne Eskridge, not a big week 1 load, and part of the reason why is because he got hurt, but even before then, he was clearly the number 4 receiver in terms of snaps. He only got on the field 12 times, or for 22% of the snaps. If he did not get hurt, that number would have probably been closer to 15, but it still would have been less than the other receiver who was expected to play decent snaps on Sunday, Freddie Swain, who had 23 snaps, about 43%. So I don't know if that was just because he was coming off of an injury. I don't know if it was because it was his first NFL game, but we were definitely being more careful with Eskridge than I thought. And, of course, he still got his head cracked and hit the really unfortunate situation. They're hoping for good news later today, but probably missing a little bit of time. And Penny Hart, 2 snaps on offense, less than 4%. So not a significant number of snaps there at all. Finally, for the offense, tight end, and very balanced here. Everett played 39 snaps and Dissly played 38. So both guys were a little above 70% of the snaps, meaning that both guys were on the field a pretty good amount. So I think we all watched the game on Sunday and we saw Dissly and Everett on the field at the same time. So we like those 2 tight end sets. In fact, we might like them about as much as we like our 3 receiver sets. And when you roll in the 6 Tyler Mabry snaps that he got for actually over 11% of the snaps, seems like we like what we have in that tight end room, and you might see this number go up even a little bit more when Colby Parkinson gets back in the mix. So, good usage of the tight ends, and you can see that we like both guys, and we think both guys add value to the offense, so that's definitely exciting. And that pretty much concludes the offensive snaps. One note is that Ethan Posick played 26% of the snaps, but we're going to talk more about him tomorrow. Okay, defensive snaps, and this was really interesting. There were some surprises here for me. Defensive ends, Carlos Dunlap. We kept his snap count low, which I personally really like because he's old, and we need him around at the end of games. We need him around late in the season. We don't need him so much in a game where in the fourth quarter we go up 3 scores. And part of the reason why we were able to do that is because a lot of players were effective getting to Carson Wentz. But we'll go through that as we get through this week in a little more detail. But we played a lot of snaps on defense, 76, which is the price you pay when you run a bend but don't break defense. You give up a lot of first downs in exchange for not giving up touchdowns. You give up a lot of long drive field goals. We had a couple of drives end in 4th down failures for the Colts offense. So a lot of snaps, which is not ideal, but that's the cost of doing business. So the good news is we have the rotations to keep up. So Dunlap 40, barely over half the snaps on defense, which I actually kind of like it. I know Dunlap is great, but I also know he's getting up there in years and we need to be careful. Alton Robinson, big surprise here for me, 12 snaps, not even 16%. And I may speak more about this later this week, but Alton Robinson balled out on those 12 snaps. He was a boss on those 12 snaps. So we need to get him on the field a little bit more. He's young, he's got a lot of energy, he hasn't shown to be injury prone yet in his career, so 12 snaps, not good enough. But he balled out on those 12 snaps, I will say that. Benson Mayowa, I am happy to report here that we had a plan when we signed Mayowa, and we are executing that plan. He got 32 snaps, 42.11%. I think a lot of those snaps are going to go to Alton Robinson as the year goes on because Alton Robinson is better and younger and has more upside, but Benson Mayowa played well, and he played a healthy 42% of the snaps. Kerry Hyder, 41 snaps, just over or just under 54% of the snaps. So that's about in line with what I was expecting from Kerry Hyder. And now for the biggest surprise of the day, and for me a welcome one because I've always liked this guy, but I kind of gave up on him after last year. Rasheem Green, 53 snaps, the most of any defensive lineman on this team. He played more than Puna, he played more than Dunlap, he played more than anybody on that line. Almost 70% of the snaps, and that was because we lined him up in a bunch of different places and used his versatility. So while I don't like Rasheem Green in coverage, I can say that his versatility is paying dividends for this defensive line, and he's young. So if he can play 70% of the snaps effectively all season long, that is a huge wad of cash we just found in our pocket that we forgot was there. So awesome stuff from Rasheem Green. Okay, defensive tackle, this is pretty much what I expected, except LJ Collier being inactive is disappointing even to me. I'm not a big Collier fan. I liked him a little bit more than some Seahawks fans do, I will admit, but I don't think even they thought LJ Collier was going to get slapped with the inactive tag in week 1. So other than that, it makes sense the way we divvied out snaps for the defensive tackles. Puna Ford got 52, which is a little more than I would like, but when you play that many snaps on defense total, it's understandable. 68.42% of the snaps went Puna's way, which is a decent percentage. We just need to reduce the total number of snaps we play at some point this season, which I believe will probably happen. Al Woods played 27 snaps, which is a great number for a guy like him because he's very old and he didn't play football last year. He's, to a certain extent, probably working himself back into shape. 35.5% of the snaps. And Brian Monet, who actually whooped butt on Sunday, and he could be one of the happiest surprises on this team because if Monet is good, then we don't have to worry about Collier being bad as much. He played 35 snaps, almost half the snaps total, and I think he played really well. All right, so Kimdichie obviously was on the practice squad still, but we'll revisit him later. Now let's go to linebacker, and this is going to be pretty simple. Wagner played every snap, all 76 snaps, as he usually does, 100%. Jordan Brooks played about 90% of the snaps, only missed 8. Now, where did those 8 snaps go? It looks like they went to Cody Barton. He played 8 snaps for 10.5% of the total number. So, seems like in certain situations, or maybe just to give Brooks a rest, we're putting Barton in, which works for me. I'm interested to see if there's something situational with the linebackers that is causing us to put Barton out there, or if it's just a matter of, hey, Brooks is playing all these snaps, let's give him a break because he's young still. But that seems pretty reasonable to me. And Darrell Taylor, now, let's be clear here. Darrell Taylor played some of these snaps at defensive end. We don't know how many exactly, but Taylor played some of these snaps at defensive end. He played 26 total for 34%, which, given it was his first ever NFL game, seems reasonable. And he played well on those snaps, by the way. He made some plays. So this seems to be a pretty healthy rotation on the front 2 lines of the defense to me. Maybe you could talk me into Poona Ford needing to pull back his snap count a little bit, but he's relatively young too, so he can probably handle it for now. And again, this is not going to be as big of a problem once the total snap count goes down. We're not going to be playing 76 defensive snaps in every game we play. Okay, finally, cornerback, and this is actually pretty binary. DJ Reed and Trey Flowers played every snap, 76, 100%. They were out there on every defensive play. And none of the other outside corners got on the field. Obviously, Trey Brown is injured. Some of these guys were inactive. Some of these guys are still in the practice squad. So there's really nothing to talk about there. The only thing interesting is the rotation at nickel corner. We had a nickel corner on the field for 62 snaps. So that's more than 80% of our snaps. So 28 of those snaps went to Marquise Blair, who, in my estimation, played fine, and Ugo Amadi got 34 snaps, or about 45%. And in my estimation, he played fine. Blair has more upside, Amadi has more experience, and we're letting both guys kind of get early opportunities to prove who's actually going to be better for us. So I think Blair has more upside, so I'd rather play him, but this is not a bad solution to make sure that you have a good balance of talent and experience on the field from snap to snap. Now, the fact that we were in nickel for close to 81.5% of our snaps probably informs that Darrell Taylor was a linebacker for about 18.5% of the snaps, which means that he played slightly more than half of his snaps at linebacker, assuming that's how we balanced out the defense, and played slightly less than half of his snaps at defensive end. So assuming we did something like that, that's probably how it actually divvied out for Darrell Taylor. But regardless, that was the one interesting thing we did at cornerback. And those are your snap counts for week 1. I'm really happy with pretty much all of this. We played a lot of snaps on defense, like I said, but some weeks you have to do that, especially when you're playing a team that likes to dink and dunk their way slowly down the field. And look, they scored 16 points, and 6 of those points were in basic garbage time, so I'm not going to be upset about that at all. And offensively, I like some of the stuff we're doing. I don't know if I want Carson to get this much of a workload, but even then, he only touched the ball 19 times. It's not that bad. So I think we're doing well through one game. And I don't think there's any one area of this team we desperately need somebody new. Now, Collins is going to get called up next week, in all likelihood, and he'll get some carries, so that'll change things a little bit. I still think we're going to get Adkins on the defensive tackle list, but we'll see. And we'll see how much that ends up mattering. All right, I'm out of here. Peace out. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think down below. Another video coming later today. Stream's probably coming tonight. See you guys then. Go Hawks.